How the Library of Congress became America's library. The Library of Congress is the nation's oldest federal cultural institution. It was founded in 1800 to serve as a reference library for Congress. Space in the U.S. Capitol building was used to store the books. In August of 1814, Washington, D.C. was invaded as part of the War of 1812. British troops set fire to the Capitol building where the library was housed, and many books and papers were lost in the blaze. Within a month, former President Jefferson had offered his personal library as a replacement. In January 1815, Congress appropriated funds to purchase over 6,000 volumes from Jefferson to serve as a basis for rebuilding the library's collection. Samuel Smith served as an intermediary for the purchase. In a letter to Smith, Jefferson shared his hopes that the library would have a national impact. He wrote, "An interesting treasure is added to your city, now become the depository of unquestionably the choicest collection of books in the U.S., and I hope it will not be without some general effect on the literature of our country." From 1864 to 1897, Ainsworth Spofford served as the first Librarian of Congress and built the library into a truly national institution. He was responsible for the Copyright Law of 1870. The law required that 2 copies of any work seeking copyright protection had to be placed on deposit with the library. This deposit requirement caused a flood of material to pour in, which quickly filled the existing shelf space. A design contest was held to choose plans for a new library, and a winning design was authorized in 1886. Construction began soon after. The newly finished library opened its doors on November 1, 1897, and over the next century, the library amassed a collection of millions and millions of items, but patrons had to come to the library and physically access those materials. With the advent of digital preservation technologies, federal institutions began working to digitize historical content in December of 2000. These preservation efforts also had the happy effect of making it possible to display and access the material over the Internet. The library's holdings can provide amazing primary sources for teaching and learning, but the library's website itself is so large, with so many collections, where do you start? Fortunately, the library's staff has a program specifically to assist educators with that question. The Teaching with Primary Sources program, or TPS, was launched in 2006 to help teachers use the library's vast collection of digitized primary sources to enrich their classroom instruction. TPS offers support such as lesson plans, primary source sets, and professional development. Many of the training opportunities are provided through the 28 consortium members across the country, such as the Center for Historic Preservation at Middle Tennessee State University. Workshops are held with educators from across Tennessee and led by staff from the MTSU Center for Historic Preservation. Teachers work through lessons provided by the TPS program and gain background knowledge as well as familiarity with the library's digital collections. Workshop topics have included subjects such as founding documents, women's suffrage, civil rights, and the American Civil War. I have been fortunate enough to work with the TPS program here in Tennessee. I began attending their workshops in February 2012. During the summer of 2014, I was the educator in residence for their program and worked closely with the MTSU staff developing lesson plans and other teacher resources. Primary sources offer a window into the past. They were produced by people who lived during that time period, and they give students a very real sense of what it was like to be alive during a long past era. They engage students through the first-hand accounts of events. They encourage critical thinking skills as multiple viewpoints are encountered. And students construct knowledge as they synthesize what they find as they research. But why should we use the Library of Congress and TPS to find those primary sources? Well, because they're free, and they already have teacher resources prepared. They align with curriculum easily, and they can be accessed from school or home, which makes them convenient for student projects, reports, and homework. Let me share some examples of how my students and I have used the library's digital content. Many of my students saw the movie Red Tails, and they were curious about the Tuskegee Airmen. The interest of my students about the film provided an opportunity to discuss how African American military service paved the way for the civil rights movement. On the library's website, we found the Veterans History Project, which offers photos, interviews, and even videos of discussion panels featuring the airmen. Our 4th grade science textbooks end with a unit on inventions and inventors, including an article on Wilbur and Orville Wright. The students wanted to know more about the Wright brothers, so we searched for photos of their early planes and even found some of the design drawings. Then we constructed our own balsa wood gliders and flew them. African American History Month gives educators a chance to introduce historic figures that students may not have heard of before. Photos and audio clips of famous performers like Marian Anderson are available digitally through the Prints and Photographs collection and the National Jukebox. Films like Indiana Jones and National Treasure romanticize archaeological explorers, but what about real explorers? Matthew Henson was the first American to reach the North Pole. Photos of his and other expeditions are stored on the library's website. Archived copies of newspapers, magazines, and other print resources can help to bring history to life. Several of my students were in the theater the day that I saw 42, the movie that tells the story of how Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball. Once we were back at school, we searched the library's site for more information about Robinson, and we even found the cover illustration from one of the comic books about him. Primary sources can be paired with children's literature to capture the imagination. Tennessee history is much more exciting when you learn that a Tennessean was the first woman to win 3 gold medals in the Olympic Games. The African American Odyssey showcases other outstanding moments like that. Our 5th grade studies World War II, the Manhattan Project, the Cold War, and the space race. Visitors from nearby Oak Ridge come and talk to the students about Tennessee's part in the war efforts. And then after this year's visit, we searched for images of V-2 rockets, Sputnik, and the moon landing before building our own rockets and launching them. Tying hands-on activities to the archival images and information created a connection to the students' lives. Things have changed tremendously since Jefferson's time. As forward-thinking as he was, he could never have predicted that his personal library would give rise to a digital collection of millions of items available across the world. His hope to have an impact on U.S. literature has been surpassed by providing information and inspiration in many other fields of endeavor. President Jefferson's book collection has truly become America's library.